Hello, good evening, and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you your team every single day, guys. Welcome along. It is fantastic to have you here tonight as we talk about all the things to do with our fantastic football club. Look, it's not the best time, is it, at this moment in time? Things are not great at this moment in time, but we have a European tie to look forward to. We are going to look ahead to that tomorrow night, so please obviously come and join us for that. Welcome, Janet. Hello, Janet. Evening. I'm doing okay. It's not been the greatest of weeks or so. It's been a long time since I went live. Awful long time since I last went live. I do apologise for that. We've had a few things going on in the family, a few serious things that unfortunately meant that this whole podcasting malarkey dropped very much to the bottom of the importance kind of thing. Apologies that we've not been live in a little while. We will talk about that in the future. Don't you worry. Right, look, we're going to talk Rangers tonight. We're going to talk the future. We're going to talk revolution. We're going to talk change. It's what's needed. We will, like I said, we will be talking about the Bilbao game tomorrow night. That's Wednesday night, the night before, obviously, the game on Thursday. Rather than tonight, we're going to talk, obviously, over, change. What we need to do to change this team. What we need to step up in terms of this. And there's so much that needs to talk about. It does, Janet, absolutely. There's so much, that needs to change. There's so much that needs to be done to this club. Now, we're going to address, first of all, the takeover. There's an awful lot going around about the takeover. I think a lot of it is down to certain newspapers and certain groups spreading malicious gossip about the takeover because the other side of the city are quite clearly not happy and are slightly panicking, shall we say, about the future. You've got a few of their fans, I think, realise that this is very much a game changer. If Rangers come in, if Rangers obviously takeover is completed, which, we've still got to say if, even though the strong story is that it is kind of that the takeover will be done by the end of this month, then, we've got to still look at it in terms of if, because it's not signed, sealed, delivered. And look, call me Mr. Pessimistic, but I'm not one for counting my chickens before they've hatched. I want to see it done and dusted. I want to see it all signed, sealed and delivered by Rangers before I kind of say, yep, that's it. We're done. We're going for it. But, look, it is going to change things. It is definitely going to change things. Now, there's lots of stories out there at the moment. There's stories as regards, like I said, people spreading stories about the takeover supposedly hitting a glitch. The takeover supposedly, been in trouble because of certain things going on in England, certain things going on in America. There's all those stories going around at this moment in time. But I think there's an awful lot of mischief been made there. There really is, in terms of what's happening with those stories. We're going to talk a little bit about those. Now, also there's stories as well in terms of, the whole situation with what the 49ers will do once they come in. There's a lot of stories around about that. We'll talk a little bit about that as well tonight. So, Professional Cynic says the future's bright, the future's orange. Yeah. Oh, what? That was fantastic, wasn't it? I don't know if you remember that. That was a great advert, wasn't it? Future's orange. Yeah, I wouldn't mind a few more Dutch players if that's what you're alluding to, Professional Cynic. I think a few more Dutch players would do well in this team. I do like a good Dutch player for Rangers. We've certainly got a proud history. Fernando Rickson, Arthur Newman. For example, the De Boer brothers, Michael Moles. There's a fair few people that, have done really, really well with that. Do you think Kelly should start, Owen? I know Butland will start. Do you think he should? That's a good question, Janet. That's a very, very good question. Look, do I think Kelly should start? No, I don't think Kelly should start. But I don't think Butland should start. I don't think either of them should start. I think Butland is playing appallingly badly. I think Butland is absolutely shocking at the moment. I think, he's making at least one mistake per game, which is costing a goal. Now, I do understand, of course, that when a goalkeeper makes a mistake, it inevitably tends to 99% of the time lead to a goal. If an outfield player makes a mistake, it doesn't always lead to a goal because there's someone there to kind of bail him out, isn't there? There's someone there to kind of, stop the embarrassments, to stop the hurt, on the whole. Whereas when the goalkeeper tends to make a mistake, it does tend to be ending in a goal because that's the nature of football, isn't it? He's the last line of defence, he's the last guy at the back. Now, I also get as well that, Butland's poor form and Butland's lack of form, is a situation is leading to, I think to some degree, a lack of confidence, in the back four as well. I think the back four, I've got a worry that, that they're concerned about the keeper behind them. They're concerned that if a shot gets past them, it's going to go through Butland. They're concerned about him commanding his area. They're concerned about him coming for the ball. And that, of course, then sows a seed of doubt. And, there's a lot of people then, you as a defender, you're looking over your shoulder constantly, aren't you? So, I think it kind of breeds uncertainty. And uncertainty isn't good when defending. You need a strong back five who all trust each other, who all believe in each other. So, look, I get that. And like I said, I do think Butland is not in great form at the moment. Curry says we need to stick by Butland. He's bailed us out more times than I can count. That's the thing about Butland. Yes, he makes mistakes, but he is still a better goalkeeper than Liam Kelly. CJNI says, what happened to the Butland who used to come out and claim the ball in the air? Has he lost his confidence or couldn't be asked as he never got the England place? Look, I don't know. I don't know. I think the problem with Butland is that he is in very bad form and his confidence is a little shot at this moment in time, which is a little bit of a surprise given how, he saves in that penalty shootout against Fenerbahce. You think it would be soaring. Now, the issue that I've got with dropping Jack Butland, and I know that Butland makes a mistake, is that I don't have massive confidence and massive faith in Liam Kelly. I think Kelly has also got a mistake in him. I think Kelly has also got an error in him. I mean, you've got to look at, was it the last game he started was the Hibs game at Easter Road where he comes for that cross, makes a complete arse up of it and Bashiri equalises. He was to blame for that. I don't think Liam Kelly's that good a goalkeeper. I think he is, I don't know, I just think he's dodgy as well. And, Kelly as well has not played an awful lot. Do you stick him in against Atletico Bilbao, who are a top Spanish side? Now, I've heard, I dared to suggest the other day that, that perhaps we should play Finlay Curtis and Bailey Rice. And I was told that I was an embarrassment. I was told that basically that I wanted to throw the game because I wanted to play some of the young players. Do you change your goalkeeper ahead of a game like this? Now, we go back, I suppose, to Alex Ferguson. He did it, didn't he? I mean, he dropped Jim Leighton after that disaster cup final against Palace and played Les Seeley. I think there's pros and cons for it. I mean, look, personally, I'd say that this is too big a game to make that change. This is too big a game to kind of take Butland out and put Kelly in. Kelly is ring rusty. He hasn't played a lot. He's not a great goalkeeper. This is a game where you're going to get tested. And I think as well, you're going to need a shot stopper. And for me, Jack Butland is a better shot stopper than Liam Kelly. He can pull off saves that Liam Kelly can't. Now, yes, he has got a mistake in him. But then again, so has Liam Kelly. Now, personally speaking, if Mason Munn had more experience, I'd be inclined to stick Mason Munn in goal. I mean, he hasn't, so I wouldn't throw him into the Bilbao game. I would perhaps think about using him in the league to see what he's got and to give him some more experience in league football. But Butland, I think, has to be, made very clear to him ahead of Thursday night's game that this is it. This is it. He's drinking in Last Chance Saloon. He really genuinely is. And I think, if there was a goalkeeper like Robbie McCrory on the bench, I would have far more confidence in dropping Butland for McCrory. If there was someone like that to come through, I'd say that, drop him, play, McCrory. As well, you look in England, at Liverpool, they've got Kevin Kelleher behind Alisson. Again, they've got no worries about leaving Alisson out. You look at the top teams, they do have 2 or 3 good goalkeepers. I would be inclined to leave him out if Kelly was better. Dave J says, Barry's insistent on playing Dessers. Could he play behind Igman as a 10? Just a thought, since his finishing is awful and his first touch is okay. Could he be better with this? I don't think he could. I think he's more a 9. Because part of the problem with Dessers, Dave, is that he doesn't move. He doesn't move. He doesn't link up play. He doesn't do any of that well enough for me, because if you go back, as I said on the video this morning, to Danilo and Igman, the one thing they do well together is they interchange position. There's a fluidity of movement which isn't there with Dessers. Curry says Hadji is a must start for me. Completely different team. Yeah, I'd play Hadji tomorrow, Thursday night. Absolutely would play Hadji tomorrow night. Absolutely. Yeah. For all Butland's faults, he has a nightmare of a defence in front of him. CJ, that's a great point. He does have a nightmare of a defence. The defence is, I mean, to quote David Edgar, and look, Heart and Hand is one of the few podcasts I still listen to. David Edgar on the flagship, I think, said the other day, said that the defence is howling. The defence is absolutely howling. It is absolutely howling this season. And I agree that if the defence was better, I would play. I'd perhaps Butland, we wouldn't see those mistakes from Butland. We've got a poll running at the moment. Who needs to play as a 9 v Bilbao? Hamza is 80%. 5% of you say Dessers. If you're voting for Dessers, let me know why you think Dessers should play, when I think the vast majority of Rangers fans don't think he should. And 15% of you say Danilo. Dave, it was a great thought, mate. A good thought. I mean, look, I'll try anything at this stage, try and get a win. It's a pity Munn doesn't have more experience, says Graham. I agree with you on that one. Right, look, getting back to the takeover, because, I mean, I want to talk more about the Bilbao game tomorrow night on the preview. So, we'll get to that. Look, the takeover. So there's all these stories going around at the moment because of the fact that Leeds are currently in sort of this absolutely dodgy, awful spell at the moment where they are playing shocking. They've won 1 of their last 6. They're in a real bad way in terms of winning games. They're not doing well at all at this moment in time. Now, obviously, people keep talking about this rule. Although Leeds are 1-0 up tonight against Middlesbrough. Dan James has scored after 2 minutes. So they talk about that. Now, I don't think the rule is a massive concern in terms of them owning more than one club. I think if it was, the 49ers wouldn't have gone into this, would they? I mean, would the 49ers enterprises have wasted millions on, and look, they will have spent money already on this, spent money on people, actually looking into it, in terms of doing the legal work, in terms of doing the paperwork, in terms of filing the paperwork, in terms of negotiations, in terms of starting to pay for shares. They will have spent money on this already. Now, does anyone honestly think that if they had a real concern and a real worry that this takeover wouldn't go ahead, that it would collapse because of this rule that there is in the EFL Championship, that they wouldn't have gone ahead and done it? I genuinely don't believe the 49ers enterprises guys, Parag Marathe and others, are stupid enough to put all their eggs in one basket and say, right, let's spend millions and millions and millions on doing this deal, but not actually do, but base it all on just the fact that Leeds are going to get promoted. Because I know, we all know football. Football's a weird sport. It's a funny old game, as Greavesy used to say. You can be playing like prime Brazil one moment, or prime Barcelona one moment. The next minute you can be playing like Yeovil Town or Livingston or Queen's Park and getting absolutely smashed by somebody. That's what football's like. So I don't believe for a minute that the Niners would have put all this money, all this effort, all this time in if they didn't believe they could get this deal done, no matter what the rules are in England, no matter what the rules are on multi-club ownership. I genuinely don't believe that they would have put money into this. Now, the other thing that kind of moves round this deal is that the 49ers will not own the club outright. They will not own the club outright by themselves. Andrew Kavanagh also has a stake in this club. So therefore, it is a jointly owned club. It is not a sole ownership club as well. Now, I'm sure that there is some sort of rules as regards the whole situation with the multi-club ownership. Now, the 49ers have spoken about this, and they've said, look, and I think it's well known in the world of those who are not, let's say, influenced by the old firm rivalry, that are not biased to one side of the city over another side of the city, that don't have an axe to grind, that don't have papers to sell, that don't have clicks to get on the internet. that these people are coming out and saying that this takeover is proceeding fully on, that the due diligence has been completed, that the legal side of it has been completed, and the deal will be done by the end of this month. Now, would it have been reported by those in the know sources, people who are financial experts, people who are football finance experts, people who are, the sort of people that actually, know what they're talking about now, who do not have papers to sell, who do not have clicks to get on internet sites to satisfy advertisers, would they realistically, be making this up? Well, no, of course they wouldn't. It's a situation, a real situation, I believe, that is genuinely, honestly true, that this takeover is proceeding full steam ahead, that the takeover will be completed by the end of this month or just about the start of next month. I don't honestly believe for a minute that this is where the papers are saying it is at. The Daily Record, which is we all know is the Daily Rebel. And people can say, oh, well, they broke the story of the takeover first. Well, yeah, of course they did, because they want clicks. They want people to read their stuff, So, but we know that the Daily Rebel have a natural bias towards the other side of the city. We know that they favour them over us. They know they hate us. They're not called the Daily Rebel for nothing. The Sun is about, well, we all know, let's face it. I mean, the other paper that's reporting this is the Scottish Sun. I mean, let's face it, the Sun is about as reliable. I mean, I'd rather read a piece of used toilet paper than read the Sun. I really genuinely would. The Sun is just an absolutely disgusting publication. Really genuinely is. So, at the end of the day, look, there is no truth in these rumours that there is a collapse imminent, that the deal is going to fall through, that the deal is over, that this is, if Leeds don't get promoted, it all falls apart. Genuinely, that is an absolute load of horse shit. It really is. Honestly is. Let's have a little look at some comments here from you guys. Graham Roberts says, do you think the 49ers are working on the team and manager behind the scenes? Mate, you can rely on them to be doing that. The one thing the San Francisco 49ers as a group, as an organisation, as a franchise do is they plan. They plan for the future. They plan long term. They do put in place strategies. They will have scouting networks working. They will have data analysis working. They will have all that in place. And they will have a good idea who they want to sign in the summer. They will have a good idea who they want as their manager, so that when day one comes of the 49ers and Andrew Kavanagh walking through those double doors into that marble staircase, that they will know exactly who they want, what players they want, and how they want to go about this. They won't be going into this with their eyes closed. They will be fully aware of what is going on. Curry says, with serious investment, you'd surely expect serious management and development. You certainly would, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. The Daily Liar, says Janet, absolutely. Spot on is the Daily Liar. Graham says, I would like to think the new owners will have a manager in place. He's working on new signings. The only thing I would say about that is, Cubby, that's funny, mate. That's funny. The only thing I would say about that is that I don't think that the manager is buying players anymore. I honestly believe that we're in a very modern era now where managers don't buy players anymore. You look at the situation and very much now it's a head coach. It's not a manager anymore. It's a head coach. And the sporting director, the technical director, whatever you wish to call him, the director of football, the guy at the very top, he is the person going out and buying players. He is the guy working with the scouting teams. He is the guy bringing in players. He is the guy then matching a manager to the players that he's signing. It's very much a modern way of doing things. So when managers, which they inevitably do, get sacked or move on or leave, that they then bring in a manager who can work with the set of players that he's got, that can develop the set of players that he's already got at the club. So they don't need to go, right, they're all shit, out the window, start again. The days of managers coming in and being stuck with players they don't want, and managers coming in and throwing away all those players to bring in their own players, and then when they get sacked, the history repeating itself. I honestly believe those are over now. The way we go about this, I think, it is changing. It is a modern European way of working, guys. It really is. And it's the way of the future. And it's the way of the future. Now, Stephen Moorhead said, get rid of Dessers, Tav, Lawrence. They don't want to play for the shirt. Now, one of the strong stories that is coming out of the sort of of this takeover at the moment is the way the 49ers want to set up the club, the way they want to take this club forward, the way they want to develop the club, is to move over to a very much a model where they are, basically saying, well, okay, we want to bring in young players. We want to have young players, and we want to have players that are lean, that are hungry, that want to play for the club. We want players that are, development players who can be sold, who can be made profit on. They want to, I think, work very much like Brighton, like Brentford, like Bournemouth in England. That's the way they want to work. Now, look, anyone who thinks now that the 49ers are going to come in, that they're going to plough vast sums of money into this football club, that they're going to spend 20 million, they're going to spend 30 million, 40 million, 50 million of their own money on players. I've got news for you. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen, okay? Jed York, who is, the main guy. He's the guy who owns the 49ers and therefore indirectly owns 49ers Enterprises. Jed York, who is the president of the San Francisco 49ers. He is the head of the York De Bartolo family who run the San Francisco 49ers. He is moving very much to an organisation. If you look at what they're doing with the San Francisco 49ers at this moment in time, they are getting rid of a lot of their older players. They're more injury-prone players. They're players on big deals who are not cutting the mustard, and they're bringing in younger, hungrier players. That's what they're doing with the franchise in America at the moment, okay? So, what is the story that is going around at the moment is that the Niners will come in, that they will go very much to a development model. They will go into a model where they start to bring in young players that are hungry, that want to develop, that want to get better, that want to be improved. And that's the way they're going to go. Buy young players, bring them in, develop them, sell them on. Look, I would love to go back to the old days, where Rangers had the money, they had the power to go and buy whoever they wanted to, play those players until they were ready to sell them and sell them on. The days of Gaza and Laudrup and Rickson and Moles and Terry Butcher and Gary Stevens, Ali McCoist, Mark Haitley, those days are gone. Unfortunately, those days are gone. They're never going to come back. Scottish football doesn't have the money. It doesn't have the pulling power of the English Premier League. It doesn't have the money, the pulling power of the La Liga, of Serie A, of the Bundesliga. So, it's never going to get back to the stage where we are financially able to keep on just spending money. And plus, we got into a lot of trouble doing that in the past. What we need to do, I think, is move to this very much this European, continental, Brighton, Bournemouth, Brentford models of bringing in players, developing them, selling them on for big profits, and then reinvesting that into the squad. That is the way to go. You cannot, in this modern PSR, FFP world, survive on just your owners putting their hands in their pockets and going, there's 20 million, there's 30 million, there's another 30 million, there's another 30. You just can't do it anymore. Those days are gone. They're finished, okay? Yes, in the future, when Rangers are perhaps in the Champions League, established in the Champions League, yes, if we're getting in more money from external revenue sources, from sponsorship deals, from kit deals, from other things like that, then yes, we may need to start to spend money, be able to spend vastly bigger sums of money on players when we're bringing in more money. But until that happens, we're not going to be in a position where we can spend 40, 50, 60, 70 million because FFP, PSR will just not allow us to do so. Let's get back to some of your comments. Dave J says, what do you think? Talk of Davy Weir coming in as sporting director. Look, to be honest with you, I would absolutely 100% love that. I think it would be a good move. He would fit what the 49ers want to do. If you look at the job he's done at Brighton, I know he's head of loans at Brighton, and it's Sam Jewell that's head of the kind of that model of working. But Davy Weir will have worked alongside Sam Jewell. He'll see how Sam Jewell operates, and Davy Weir would bring that Brighton style model to the club. And look, if anyone doubts Brighton as a football club, you've only got to look at how well they've done in the Premier League over the last few years. They're certainly batting well above their expectation for the size of club they are. The players they've had at the club, Alexis McAllister played for Brighton. I mean, Alexis McAllister's a World Cup winner. This guy's a superstar. There's Mitoma, there's Lavia, there's Caicedo. These are all players they've sold for hundreds of millions of pounds. So at the end of the day, I honestly believe that, if Davy Weir was to come to the club as part of this model, as part of what the 49ers want to do in the future, Dave, I think it would be a brilliant move. And also, if you go for a manager who's not Barry Ferguson, you're kind of placating the Rangers men crowd because you're bringing in someone who is a Rangers man. Davy Weir is a Rangers man. This guy played for us until he was 42 years old, or 41, I can't remember what it was now. But, this guy's a Rangers man through and through. And you bring in someone who not only understands the club, but understands how to set this trading model up and get it really succeeding. So for me, brilliant. Would you give the new manager a 4 or 5 year contract or a year rolling contract? Can't afford to be paying off any more managers, says Janet. Janet, I think the issue is that, and I agree with you. I honestly agree with you. I think we can't afford to be paying off any more managers. So you've got to kind of hope that the next appointment is the right appointment. And I do want to talk about that in this podcast. It has to be the right man. And the only issue is there's very few managers I think would accept year rolling contracts. If you look at the only real manager in the Premier League who works on a year rolling contract is Pep Guardiola. Guardiola is a man who I suppose will be supremely confident. He's got absolutely no chance ever of getting sacked. He really hasn't. So he can work on a year rolling basis. And Guardiola's always been someone who, wanted to do what he wanted to do. He wanted to work the team as he wanted to work. And he wants to run his career as he wants. And if he decides to walk away, he wants to be able to walk away. So I don't know whether many managers would go for a year rolling contract, if I'm honest with you, Janet. We need a Scottish core in there that knows what the range is about. I think in terms of players, you do. And, we're starting to develop that with Barron, with Lyle Cameron, hopefully with Bailey Rice coming through as well. What else do we know? Okay, the 49ers will dip their toes in with investments. They certainly will. Good old days. Nicholas, legend. How you doing, mate? Long time no speak. Good evening, South Wales Lords. Nicholas is in the crowd. Saw a left winger with HSV at the weekend. Jean-Luc Dompe, market value €2.5 million. Looks a steal, says Graham Brown. Graham, get writing to Niels Coppen, mate. Get writing to Niels Coppen. Latest Champions League scores, guys, tonight. Arsenal 0, Real Madrid 0. And then Bayern Munich 0, Inter Milan 0. And in the EFL Championship, Leeds are still winning 1-0 in the game against Middlesbrough. Right, so let's talk about managers, shall we? Let's talk about managers. Look, and I think, in terms of the manager, we need to have the right person now. We've had a point where we've gone through so many managers in the last 2, 3, 4 seasons, haven't we? We've gone from Gerrard to Gio to Beale to Clement to Barry. And we've gone through too many managers. We need some stability at the club. We need someone who's going to take this club forward. And that's why it is so imperative this next decision is right. That this next decision is spot on in terms of who gets the job. Now, we're currently running a poll on the community tab on the channel. Who should be the new Rangers manager? And I've put down the leading candidates for this job. And at the moment, the favourites are Gerrard and Russell Martin. They're the two favourites for this job. They are odds on at the moment to get the job. Backed up, I think the other people are Barry Ferguson is on there as well as a strong candidate too. And Marco Rosa is also on there as well. He is one of the favourites as well to get the job. So, look, at the end of the day, we've got other candidates. Obviously, Claire Muscat is on there. Kjetil Knutsen is a 33-1 outsider. So I think that pretty much says that rules him out. Janet says Gerrard. Gerrard said he doesn't want it, taking time out. Janet, they all say that. And then if someone comes in with a big money offer or the right offer, they go back on their word and they're very quick to take the job again. So I wouldn't rule I wouldn't rule Gerrard out just yet. Curry says I'd keep Barry just now. Yeah, I mean, look, Barry will be here to the end of the season. Of course he will. It's what happens after that. What happens after the end of the season. Now, look, I've got nothing against Barry Ferguson, personally speaking. Okay, I've got no issues with Barry Ferguson as manager. I love Barry to bits. I think he's a fantastic Rangers man. He loves the club. He loves being involved with the club. You know, he is a great Rangers man. Don't get me wrong. He's a great Rangers man. He really genuinely is. However, and here's the controversial bit, I don't believe he should be the Rangers manager. I genuinely don't believe that he should be Rangers manager. I believe that we should go for someone with a lot more experience, a lot more background than him, someone with some pedigree in management. I wouldn't go for Russell Martin for that reason. I would look at someone like, and as I've said on numerous occasions, I want to get away from this narrative that it's got to be a Rangers man. It hasn't got to be a Rangers man. It's got to be the best person for the job. It's got to be the person who can turn this club around. It's got to be someone who, you know, can get the very best out of the players and out of the new players that we bring to the club, and can get the very best out of the players that are still at the club. Because I'll tell you this for nothing, you know, at the end of the day, there is, I believe, still a lot of players who you and me would want to get rid of, but will still be here come the start of next season, because you realistically cannot clear everyone out in one summer. Because if you do, you'll end up with not enough players to play come the opening of the season. You'll be faced with a situation where, you know, you're going to have cleared 10, 12 players out, but you've brought, say, 4 back in, 5 back in, which is not enough. And your squad's going to be under strength. You're not going to have a team that's good enough. I just don't think that will happen. So therefore, when whoever is the new manager, he's going to have to get the best out of some players that a lot of us think are not good enough, are past it, are poor, are not fit to wear the shirt. Whoever comes in is going to have to try and get the best out of them because of the situation we find ourselves in. You know, like I said, I don't think we can clear an entire squad in one transfer window. It's just, it's not the done thing, is it? It's not the done thing. Janet says, as long as he can make it better at Rangers, don't care who he is. Nicholas Moore says, I love Barry Ferguson, but I do agree with you, Owen, that we need someone with more experience as a manager. Rest in peace, Walter. He would have been absolutely perfect. Absolutely, Curry, of course he would. I love Barry. For me, as Owen has said, we need something different. I honestly don't think that grit and tooth alone will bring us success. I think personally speaking, the Barry Ferguson approach, the blood and bullets and kicking arse, works for a short period. For a long period, it doesn't work. Not anymore. Not in the modern game. You know, back in the day, Sir Alex Ferguson, Brian Clough could absolutely rip into people, and they could kick football boots at their head. They could hang them on changing room coat pegs. They could ball them out, and they'd be fine because players were scared of the manager. Players were scared of Brian Clough. Players were scared of Alex Ferguson. Now, they ain't scared. They're not bothered. They genuinely couldn't give a shit. They genuinely couldn't, because they'll still get their wages and they'll just demand a move. And managers can't rely on that approach anymore. It just doesn't work. Not long term. Not long term. And I think the problem we're having is that Barry is having to use that approach an awful lot, because there is a fundamental issue within this club and with these players applying themselves. There really seriously is. Janet says Curry Walter would never have stood for the Jers team playing like that. Absolutely, he wouldn't. You know, so for me, you've got to start looking at experience. You've got to start looking at players who can come in and can make a real difference. That can make a real difference. So look, you know, someone like Marco Rosa, you know, he has experience. He has a 65% win percentage with Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga. He has a high 50%, 56%, I think it is, with RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga. You know, which you know, people say, well, he hasn't won well, you know, people don't tend to win the Bundesliga. The Bundesliga tends to get won by Bayern Munich pretty much season in, season out. And you have the odd blip season where someone will come along with Dortmund and win the league, or someone will come along with Bayer Leverkusen like Xabi Alonso did and win the league. But on the whole, Bayern Munich win the league. That's just how it works out there. So, they've done fairly impressively. They've got pretty good. He's got a pretty good record in terms of winning. He he uses the Gegenpress. He's very much a kind of Jurgen Klopp style manager. He would have the experience to come in, I think, and handle these players and work with these players. And look, like I said to you, we would all, I think, write a list of players that we want out of this club this summer. But I'll tell you something, that big long list of 10, 11 names or 12 names, however long that list suddenly becomes magically, it ain't going to happen. It's just not going to happen, guys. So look, at the end of the day, we've got to kind of expect some of these players to still be here next season and still have to be worked with. Now, there will, of course, be, I think, still an influx of new players. Once the takeover happens, then there'll be 25 million pounds to spend. And I think plus whatever money we generate in player sales and freed up wages. And there will be new players coming through the door. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to remember, of course, that 4.5 million is tied up in Cortez. I don't really want to debate that one tonight, but we do, I think, need to look at this in terms of the fact that the new manager will need the experience to bring those players on. Gattuso, decent. 65% win rate doesn't win you the SPL. It doesn't, but then that's in Germany, Grant. And the level of competition in Germany is a hell of a lot higher than the level of competition within Scotland. So I would argue that 65% would probably be 75, 80, 85% in the SPL. But if you look at Dortmund play Leipzig, who are a good European football team. They play Bayer Leverkusen. They play Eintracht Frankfurt. They play Bayern Munich. They play Stuttgart. They play, there's a lot of strong teams coming out of Germany. You've only got to look at how they've done in European tournaments. So 65% doesn't win the SPL. Of course it doesn't. I agree with you, Grant. It doesn't. But you're not comparing like with like, mate, because the Bundesliga is a hell of a lot stronger than the SPL. There are a lot more teams in the German league that can win the German league. Now, people say, well, the style doesn't translate. Yes, it does, because Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp came from German football, revolutionised Liverpool, won league titles, won European Cups, won FA Cups, won EFL Cups. To me, it's not really an argument. So I don't believe the argument against Rosa should be based solely on he's a German manager. He's only managed in Germany, because that is not an argument. Jurgen Klopp had only managed in Germany when he came to Liverpool, and he won multiple trophies at Liverpool. And Jurgen Klopp's win percentage is actually worse than Rosa's. So are we arguing, therefore, that Jurgen Klopp's a bad manager? I'd like to see that argument. There's not just him. You look at David Wagner, who got Huddersfield promoted to the Premier League. I mean, Huddersfield, for God's sake, promoted to the Premier League. That's pretty amazing. So I don't think we should rule Rosa out just based solely on the fact that he's not Scottish and he's not managed in the Scottish League. Because if we're going down that route, then Derek McInnes should get the job. Or, we should go for someone like Stephen Naismith because he's got experience, or Stuart Kettlewell because they've got experience in managing in Scotland, which for me is not an argument. I wouldn't want any of them in charge of Rangers. I really wouldn't. So, Rosa for me is one of the favourites. And for the right reasons. He's got the experience. He's done well abroad. He's done well in Europe. He's a decent manager. The other candidate, Steven Gerrard. Look, we all know about Steven Gerrard. We know what Gerrard brings. Gerrard is someone who will divide the fan base. If Gerrard was to be appointed tomorrow as the new manager, it would divide the fan base absolutely massively. Of course it would. There's people who want Gerrard to stay. They want, they want things to change. Grant says if they can only invest 25 million per season, it's still going to take 3 windows. Look, it will take, Grant, of course it will take more than 3 windows, 2 windows, 1 window, to redevelop this squad. Because this squad is so genuinely bad. This squad is genuinely, Johnny, that was a joke about Naismith. I don't really want Naismith. I'm just using it as a showing the hypocrisy of the argument that it's got to be a Rangers man, someone who knows the Scottish game. Naismith played for Rangers. He knows the Scottish game. Therefore, by the argument, should be Rangers manager. More than Rosa, more than Muscat, more than Gerrard. So, look, I think at the end of the day, yes, granted, it is going to take more than 1 window. It is going to take a few windows to bring in the squad that you need. But that doesn't mean that straight away you can't compete with Celtic. Because look at this season. Celtic have dropped 14 points in 2025. If we had even a half decent team with a striker that could score goals instead of missing them all the time and blazing them over the bar, and we had a goalkeeper that didn't throw the ball into the back of his own net at least once a game, and a defence that could actually bloody defend, then we'd be a lot closer to them. We'd be a hell of a lot closer to them. We really genuinely would. We've beat them twice. We would. So, at the end of the day, I think people talk about the fact that it's going to take more than one window. Yes, it is. But that doesn't mean that in Scotland you can't compete with Celtic, because they ain't that good a team. You've seen that this season. And they're not exactly brilliant at buying players either. If you look at the two players they've signed last couple of windows, Adam Eder, shit. Arne Engels, shit. So it's not like they're very good at spending money, is it? They're not massively good at spending money. Of course they're not. Let's have a look at some of your comments in the live chat. Curry said 25 million. Look at player. Gerrard got Kamara, for example, 60,000 from Dundee, 7 million to Leeds. True. Nicholas says, I don't think bringing Stevie G back is the answer. Alan Gemmell says, can anyone tell me what capacity Weir would be coming back in? I think it will be the sporting director role, Alan. It would be to take over that job. That is very much the new job that they want to put into the club. Gerrard was good at finding diamonds in the rough, says Curry. He was. Litigation says, scared to catch a bus now, might find Barry under it. We are the people. Litigation, who's throwing Barry under a bus? I'm not throwing Barry under a bus. I'm just saying that long term, I don't think he would work as the manager. I'm saying that we need someone experienced. They're rank rotten. The only difference is their players give a shit most games. Exactly. And that is the manager's job. And I think if you supplement them with, say, 5 or 6 new players in this window, you can still make a huge difference in terms of getting closer to Celtic. Hey, Sean from Glasgow. How you doing, buddy? Good to have you here tonight. I think we can make a big difference. I don't think that this mountain is as insurmountable as as a lot of people think it is. Now, look, we are going to sell players this summer. If you look at the players that are out on loan, you're going to look at probably Dow goes, Davis goes, Seafood goes. So there's a starter. But from within the squad then, you've then got to look at this new squad, the squad that actually is still at Rangers, and say, well, yeah, they are going to sell some of those players. Some of those players are going to move on this summer. Some of those players are going to be sent off, and be got rid of because they're not good enough for this football club. And I think Grant's right. There's a lot of players within this squad that genuinely don't give a shit. As Barry Ferguson says, the players have thrown. Yeah, absolutely. I was just asking the question, litigation, who it was. Rodgers is only good when he has money to spend. Where's their youth policy? Exactly. Look, Barry, I think, Barry's in a very difficult position. Barry is doing the best job he can with the rubbish that he has got, with players that, like Grant says, don't give a monkeys. That don't care, that genuinely, just honestly, are happy to pick up their wages, happy to turn up, and that's all they want to do. They're not bothered about putting an effort in. They're not bothered about trying. Not bothered about really fighting for this team. All they're bothered about is getting their wage packet at the end of the month. That's what they want at the end of the week. I don't know how often they get paid. So yes, there is that element, and I think you do have to get rid of a certain element within the squad. I think the leadership group within the squad is rotten. I think the leadership group needs to be changed, starting with James Tavernier. Now, look, I don't really want to talk about Tav. I don't really want to mention Tav because the abuse you get from his fanboys is unbelievable. For daring to suggest that the great James Tavernier be sold at the end of the season or not be allowed to play for Rangers until he decides he doesn't want to play anymore. You'd honestly think you are, slaughtering the sacred cow. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it with him. Look, James Tavernier is past his best. He's not the player he once was. He's not as quick as he once was. He's not producing huge numbers going forward. He's still doing reasonably well going forward in a poor team, but he's still not producing unbelievable numbers like he was doing. Defensively, he's shot. He's poor defensively. So, at the end of the day, you've got a situation there where, he does need to be moved on. And I think if he stays, you have an issue there. You really do. Grant says, we didn't lose at home until after January the 2nd. Now we can't win at home. If we kept winning home games, we'd still be in the fight for the title, which shows how rank that mob really are. Correct. We need a new captain, says Sean. We do need a new captain. Conor Barron's press conference, the boy basically told us half the players have chucked it. Says Janet, footballers need to know when they need to move on. Yeah, they do. They do. And I think there's a lot of players in that squad that do need to move on, that do need to be sold this summer, that are part of the problem. You know, at the end of the day, and it's a very overused phrase, the problem at this football club is not Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds and Alan McGregor. You know, the problem was not solely Philippe Clement. Yes, he was a large part of the problem, but he was not solely to blame. The players at this football club have to carry a lot of to blame for where we are at this moment in time. And there is a lot of them that don't need to be here next season. However, we cannot get rid of all of them. You know, as much as I think we'd all like to chuck the baby out with the bathwater and start all over again from scratch, unfortunately, it just can't happen. Because, like I said to you, you know, we haven't got the finances to do that. And realistically, in one window, you cannot change an entire squad. No team can do that. Not even the team with the greatest ever sporting director and the biggest amount of money can do that. You know, not even Real Madrid can probably do that. You know, so there we go. Just at half time, Leeds are winning 1-0 against Middlesbrough. And in the Champions League at this moment in time, it's Bayern 0 Inter 1. It's at the Allianz Arena in Germany. And at the half-time break, Arsenal 0, Real Madrid 0. Butland chucks in one of games, Janet. Yes, it says, Grant, he does, mate. He's dodgy as, but unfortunately, like I said at the start of the pod, Grant, when we talked about this question of Kelly or Butland, I just don't rate Kelly enough to as bad as Butland is, and he is bad at the moment, I don't rate Kelly as being good enough to take over from him. I really don't. And also, I don't think you take your goalkeeper out for one of the biggest games of the year and put in a goalkeeper that has not played in months. Is there any good goalkeeper we should go for? You guys think we can spend? I don't know. I'd have to look at it. I haven't even looked at goalkeepers, Sean, as players. I've looked at outfield players, but not goalkeepers. The problem is they are getting overpaid and don't want to move on. Simple as that. Janet, that's a great point. You know, if you look at, that's one of the issues around Rangers, really, isn't it? You know, we do pay our players way too much money, and as a result, they don't want to move on. You know, look, James Tavernier will not want to move on because I'll tell you something for free. James Tavernier will not get 30 grand a week anywhere else. We need a tough nut in the dressing room. Then the manager gets on with the job, says Litigation. Good shout. If we get a spine, goalkeeper, centre-back, midfield, forward, we will get a run at the title. Exactly, Grant. We need to build a spine. We need to build from the back over this summer. That's absolutely vital. We need a striker. 100% we need a striker. Do we need Leeds to win the league so easy for the 49ers to buy Rangers? Sean, you know, I don't think that's as big an issue, you know, whether Leeds get up or don't get up, because the 49ers are not sole owners of, they're not majority owners of Rangers. I don't think it's as big an issue. It's not an issue really, okay? You know, at the end of the day, they are not the sole owners. They are joint owners with Andrew Kavanagh, and 49% of the club is owned by other people as well. So they are not sole owners. They do not have sole power. So, you know, they are free to own two football clubs because the EFL regulations state you can't solely own two football clubs. They will not solely own two football clubs. They own Leeds United. They own Leeds United. They have the majority share in Leeds United, but they will not have the majority share in Rangers. KF says, maybe not Thursday, but in the league, give Mason Munn a run. I agree. Evening from County Down. Evening, KF. I would definitely give Mason Munn some league games to see how he gets on. 100% agree with you. Curry says, come on, Rangers, let's go out and spank the mob Bilbao and send a message for next season that we are coming for you. Manky Bead Rattlers. Good shout, Curry. Joke coming. We need a good Tim as he can handle the crosses. Funny, mate. Funny. Get his crosses out. Get the rosaries out. Yeah, I mean, look, we are going to look ahead to the Bilbao game tomorrow night. We'll be doing a live to do that one. But look, I mean, the key points I want to kind of pull out from tonight is, number one, the takeover is not in any jeopardy. It is not going to collapse. It's not all going to fall apart. No matter what the Daily Rebel may tell you, no matter what the Sun may tell you, it's just not. It's just not. And in terms of the manager, as I've said, I just think we need someone with experience, someone to come in who can change things, someone who can come in and get a handle on the players who will still be here and change their mentality, change the way they think, change the way they play. You know, and I think we need I do think we need a massive overhaul. The playing squad is simply not good enough. There are a lot of players within this team that are stealing a living. Janet says, thought Butland's confidence would have spared after the penalty shootout, but it went the other way. Yeah, it did. And you've got to kind of raise questions is with Butland, is that, is this solely on him? Well, no, it's not solely on him, is it? It's also on Dessers. It's also, it's also on Tab. It's also on Suter. It's also on Raskin. It's also on Diamonde. It's also on Hamza. It's on a lot of people. It's on a lot of people. Grant says, Bilbao have 1 goal in 3 games, and that was a penalty, so they're not great at the moment. No, they're very much a team that blow hot and cold, Grant. They can be unbelievable one day and absolutely shocking the next. They're not playing brilliant. They're not in the best run of form at the moment. I agree. They haven't lost for 4 games, but they haven't conceded for 4 games, but they've only scored 1 goal in the last 4 games. I just go where Sky, not the newspaper, says Sean. Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think, in terms of the takeover, there's not a lot. There's nothing to worry about at this stage. Like I said to you at the start of the pod, the 49ers would not have ploughed millions into taking over a football club if they didn't think it was going to go through. They're not ones for wasting money. Alan says, did anyone feel on Saturday watching that dross in the second half that you just couldn't care less anymore? It was like watching Groundhog Day. I mean, I wouldn't have blamed you, Alan, if you didn't, because I think the players couldn't give them monkeys. Why should we? Nicholas says, Butland is constantly making basic errors and costing us games. He is. But, as we've said, is Liam Kelly going to come in and be any better? Probably not, because he's ring rusty, definitely. Leeds have been promoted from bottom feeder to feeder club. But feeder club. There are feeder club now. Yeah, maybe. That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be good. I don't think their fans would stand for it, but that would be good, wouldn't it? Right, guys, that is it for tonight. We will be back tomorrow night at 8 with your Bilbao preview, so please come and join us for that. Athletic keep playing their number 2 keeper on Thursday as they use him for Euro games. Fair enough. I mean, he's probably a decent keeper still, Graham. But yeah, thank you for joining us. It's been fantastic talking Rangers as always, guys. Look, there's a lot of work to do at the club. We know there's a lot of work to do at the club. There's a lot of people to change. There's a lot of appointments to do. Definitely is there. Curry says Rangers will always have a good run in Europe. It's in our blood, definitely. Who've Celtic got this week in Europe? Anyone know? Play Curtis on the left, Cheney on the right. Let Hamza play in a striker's position. Brilliant, mate. Kiev. That's what I would do, mate. That's what I would do. But he won't. He won't play Curtis. Right, guys, thank you for watching tonight. As always, thank you, Nicholas, as well. We are the people, says Curry. Just left a Jers game, but couldn't sat watching us. Thank you, Alan. Rangers win on Thursday night, then we lose it at the weekend, mate. Seriously, Sean, you're spot on. I can see us going and beating Bilbao 3-0 and then losing 3-0 to Aberdeen. I really can. Thank you, Litigation. Right, guys, as always, thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking to you here on the pod tonight. Please, on the way out, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, always, we are the people.